Okay. Test, test. You can hear?
Might check one too.
Yeah, I can hear you. Okay. Seems like we're good. I hope everyone out there can hear us. I had a big Discord update this evening. Good 10 minutes it spent. So yeah, and this was one of the first times where we couldn't hear each other during the countdown, which is weird. Normally,
Yeah,
no,
it
no,
usually
normally
goes.
that's
Yeah,
that's not a problem. But we're here. A Scotsman and a Canuck on the 4th of July long weekend, so clearly we're the only ones that don't have plans.
yeah, clearly.
But happy to have you back here, Gums. How you been?
I've been very well, thank you very much, sir. It's obviously a pleasure being back here again.
Yeah, no,
Um,
it's great to have you here again, especially for this week's script. This week's script is a fascinating one.
it is indeed, yeah. No, listen, it's a very good script. We're going to get into it.
Oh, okay,
Um,
no worries.
I enjoyed the reading of it and everything else, so I'm just going to get the tagline out right now.
All right. Well, okay, sure. So hold on one sec. We'll do the formal introduction to keep on format here, and I'll throw it over to you, sir. So, without further ado, ladies and gentlemen listening out there, welcome to Scripts on Saturdays, the only screenplay review show on the interwebs, discussing scripts both professional and amateur, circulating around Hollywood, giving you, the TV and movie-going audience, a behind-the-scenes and inside track on what writers are pushing and what producers are buying. I'm your host, the Script Doctor, and joining me this week is returning champion Gums 1983. So happy to have you here, sir. We've got a fun one for everyone listening live today or on the replay. This week's script is titled Turpentine, came in 49th place with 12 votes on the blacklist for 2024, and it's written by Justin Varava. So, Gums, please share with us the logline for Turpentine.
I did say I'd try and do this in my best movie voice, but unfortunately I don't have a good movie voice. So the logline basically is when a deadbeat son hires his friends to rob his own mother and father in order to pay an outstanding debt to a local drug dealer, things don't go as planned. The family bonds are stretched to the fullest extremes.
All right, yes, right. So, we got a all the money in the world type of premise here, with robbing from the family to pay off a debt. Synopsis for Turpentine is as follows: Helen Boggs, a repressed artist in a small Georgia town, yearns to reclaim her identity through her paintings. Trapped in a stifling marriage with her controlling husband Gene, she faces emotional and physical turmoil when their son Dwayne's dangerous debts spark a violent home invasion. As Helen's art gains recognition, secrets unravel, pushing her towards a breaking point. Will she find the courage to break free before it's too late? That's what this script is all about. So, Gums, you said that you liked the script and you were surprised by it. Let's go through your thought process here. So, before you read the script, what were your trepidations or anticipations?
Well, my initial thoughts were it's not for me in
Mm-hmm.
terms of like something I would go and watch in terms of like it just didn't seem like my kind of film. I'm more of an action, sci-fi, kind of comedy, really dark humor type person.
Yeah.
Um, and the more I read, it gripped me more as we went through, as we'll get into obviously in this
Mm-hmm.
episode. And I just found that when you join Patreon and you get to read the ending, you'll enjoy it as much as I did. Um, which is something that you should do.
Oh, well, thank you. But yeah, I would say this does have a strong. It has a strong opening, but it's a strong opening in the sense that it hits you in the heart really quickly, because we're actually
Yes.
focused on someone is painting a portrait, and we don't fully see all the details of the portrait. We don't really see the person who's painting it, but it's really well described. Um, and then what we get following up, when what follows up is that is we finally get that pull wide to a reveal, and it's this woman in her about 60 years old, Helen, and she has painted a self portrait where she's smiling, but conversely, in Helen herself, as she's finished the painting and she looks upon it, she feels like sad, defeated, kind of drained, and it really evokes a sense that like she has painted a fantasy of what she wishes, how she wished she was feeling right now. And we find out that her setting is actually in this tiny little corner of a tool shed where there's tons of gardening and landscaping equipment just rusting away all around her. And she's created this beautiful little self-portrait that really does convey a lot. And you can really visualize it as something out of like your typical type of dramatic indie film, or as we were saying before the show, something like what the Coen brothers would do with like Raising Arizona or Fargo or Big Lebowski or Burn After Reading or Oh Brother We're Out There, any of that type of stuff. There's that type of tone that comes through the writing. And I thought it was actually quite surprising because it is, the first page and a half is quite dense. Like there's some paragraphs here that are like 5 or 6 lines in length, and yet they're well crafted that I didn't feel like I was struggling to get through them. Like I normally don't struggle to get through paragraphs, but I know typical readers and typical executives, if they see more than 3 lines, they start to sweat. So,
Indeed. I mean, as I read it, it was a sort of slow burner. I looked at it and I went, yeah, obviously the initial emotional dump was an emotional dump. You know, there's this poor wee woman in her 60s, you know, painting lovely pictures.
mm-hmm.
So we'll get into it later on, obviously. But I looked at it and I went, I don't know if I'm going to enjoy this personally. I'll obviously review it for the show,
Mm-hmm.
but as I read further on, it started gripping me a little bit more in terms of, I don't know, something gripped me inside it. And we spoke about that before the show as well. You know what I mean? It's
Yeah.
one of those things.
Well, part of the things that I noticed, at least what gripped me a little bit, is every scene that features Helen, you gain more empathy for her. So, like right after the follow-up of her painting the self-portrait, we find out that she's just finished preparing dinner. It's like it's a chicken fried steak, but
Yeah, with the paprika.
yeah,
Yeah.
and we introduced to her husband, who he's not grumpy, but he's very much closed off and cold, and he's not really communicating much at this point, and he's just kind of eating away at the steak, and he's giving indications that something is wrong. And when Helen asks, Gene starts investigating. He's like, something's wrong with this. What did you do? Did you do anything different? She says, no, it's the same things I've always do. And he's like, no, something's different. And she eventually, you know, caves in and says, yeah, I added some paprika and a little cayenne. And Gene then starts kind of very rudely, but not as like a temper or anything, but very rudely basically says, like, you just lied to me. I didn't realize our relationship got to this point where we can tell small little lies like this. And then he continues to eat, and she, of course, asks him, like, is it worse? Is it better? And he's like, just, you know, just. So he has this crazy reaction about honesty, and then after the fact, we don't even know if he doesn't care anyways. He just cared about the fact that something changed, and now he's going to go back to his habit. And I thought the contrast between Helen and Gene there was actually quite profound, because it made me ask, well, why the heck is she with a guy like this?
Yeah, agreed. Absolutely, yeah. And I mean, when you start it off, you get given this, you know, sick, you know, elderly lady, shall we say, right?
Mm-hmm.
And she's completely hollowed out. There's no spark in the woman,
Mm-hmm.
and there's no like, she's yearning for that attention from her husband. She's yearning from that attention, like, from her life partner. They've been together, what, 30 years?
30, a little over 30 years, yeah.
A little over 30 years, yeah. And you're like, yeah, I don't like you. The instant reaction to Gina is like, yeah, I don't like you. I really don't like you.
Yeah.
And as it progresses further on, you're like, yeah, I completely don't like you. Like, you're just.
Oh, I mean, you know, it actually gets a little bit more. We get a bit more insights because they have a dinner that they eat in silence after that little conversation, if you want to call it that. And then as they're going to bed, someone ends up calling them, I guess, in the evening hours, probably like 10 o'clock at night or something. And Gene's telling his wife, don't get the phone. But Helen decides to reach up for it, and instead of answering it herself, Gene rolls over and kind of knocks her in the head, reaching for the phone, grabs it, and there's no conversation on the other side. And then, of course, Gene, hangs up the phone, and when Helen asks who it could be, Gene says, well, who do you think? I mean, and we discovered that it's their 30-year-old son who's in a beat-up Oldsmobile outside the house, calling on his cell phone, and he's not doing good.
He's not doing very good at all. And one thing I liked about the fact that they named it as an Oldsmobile.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
Evil Dead.
An '88 Royale. You haven't seen an Oldsmobile like that, and I mean, it takes some skill to maintain an '88 machine in 2025.
True. I mean, we're never given a date. We're never given a setting or a date time.
Not exactly.
I kind of put it around about the late 90s, maybe early 90s, that kind of thing.
Okay.
But when somebody says Oldsmobile, I just instantly think of the Evil Dead. I was like, yep, I like that. That's good. I like that. If it was yellow, even better.
Because that's the classic. That's the classic, yeah.
Well, yeah. I mean, that's just a personal thing to me, though. But no, you're absolutely right. I mean, his name's Dwayne. He's in a very bad way. He's into some bad people. He's into some bad things. He's done some bad things, and we'll talk about that shortly.
Well, yeah, because the narrative kind of bounces between Helen and Dwayne throughout this story. Because Helen, we see her life; it's pretty dour. And then Dwayne, he's stressed out and heads over to a bar and grill restaurant, which always makes me hungry when I read those those settings. And he meets up with his friend Patrice, and Patrice, he's this guy that kind of lends people some money, has apparently lent a lot of people a lot of money. And he's trying, and when we meet Patrice, we find out that he's been beaten up a little, because apparently the money that he's been lending other people, he's also borrowed from other people. And so we have this chain of conflict that's being thread through here. And Patrice is basically saying, this is, you've got a ticking clock, because if you can't pay, something bad's going to happen, and it's already happened to me, and it might spill over to you. And you got to find a way to get what you owe. And we find out pretty soon that he owes about $8,000, which, whether it's today or whether it's 20 years ago, that's still a significant sum. I mean,
nobody's going to put their hands on $8,000.
Yeah. And so we're kind of following Dwayne on this journey of him trying to figure out a way to get this. Now, he's kind of working for a landscape department with two of his idiot friends named Rodney and Benji. And we're seeing something of this neighborhood where it seems like every person would be of the age of majority, so between 25 and 35. They're all doing horrible, not just education-wise or at least general wisdom from life. It's like they're still 15, 16 years old. You got Benji and Rodney. They work the landscape, and they do the job well, but when they're finished their job and they're kind of out on the street having their lunch, they're also smoking marijuana. And of course, the people in the neighborhood are not too pleased by that, because they can smell it all over. And instead of, doing the mature thing, if that is of your, a habit of yours, you would probably want to drive out of a neighborhood that you work in regularly, because it might look bad for the business that you're working for customers to see, oh, I'm going to have a couple of potheads, doing my landscaping. That's always nice. And this has ended up happening. Yeah.
I love the fact that in the script itself, when it talks about Rodney, right, it gives us his description. So he's 30, long hair, neck tattoo.
Yeah.
Perpetually stoned.
Perpetually stoned.
So, that right there is just chef's kiss. Do you know what I mean? Because that gives you the mindset of the person themselves.
Very effectively done. Yep.
And when you look at it, you go, right, so Rodney's sitting having a joint. Dwayne's obviously stressing out about everything that's going on. Um, Benji's standing there, an elderly gentleman comes out, you know, what you doing? I can smell that in my house, type thing.
Yep.
They tell him, look, go away, that kind of thing. And the next thing you know, Benji pulls a sidearm on him, a stub.
Oh yeah,
And
because that guy's say I might have to call your boss and tell him that
yeah,
you're, report you for smoking weed. And of course, Benji does the dumbest thing ever. He's like, "Oh, okay, I'm just going to escalate this to threatening your life." And yeah, I believe that after I do that, you're definitely not going to tell my boss any of this stuff. And it's like, oh boy, buddy, you are very stupid
yeah.
right now.
They want, like, the joke is that so many people are so many IQ points higher than butter.
Yeah,
There you go.
there you go.
That's pretty much him. And you know what? It was well written in terms of how it happened, and he's like pointing the gun at the elderly gentleman, and he's like, you're not going to put a complaint in, and he comes and sits down, and and Dwayne's like, yeah, he's absolutely going to put a complaint in now,
Yeah,
and Ben's like, no, he's not, he's not going to put a complaint in, he's not going to do this, he's not going to do that. It's like, of course the man's going to put a complaint in. You're
of
surprised
course.
the police didn't. Do you know
Yes.
what I mean?
See, this was the type of scene that made, because up until this point, because you had that crazy, silly conversation between Gina and Helen about the spices that she added to the chicken fried steak, and him making a big deal out of it, and then we have this other scene where these three, guys are eating and smoking pot they're in the middle of a workday, and I'm thinking, okay, this is like a dry tone comedy, because you have the most extreme result from an idiot character who then thinks bad is gonna happen as a result of this, and the other two are like, yeah, something bad's gonna happen from this, and so now we have this ticking clock of like, when is this bad thing gonna happen? And on top of that, it reminded me a little bit of like that relationship between like Jeff Bridges, John Goodman, Steve Buscemi at the bowling alley, having their conversations, they're back and forth, one way more serious than all the others, and clearly the guy that's going to get people in trouble because he makes assumptions and jumps to conclusions and doesn't think he'd ever be considered in the wrong for his actions. That's kind of Benji to a degree, and Rodney is kind of an offshoot of that, and so this kind of sets up a little bit more of the blowback for what's going to happen to these characters. And then we contrast that later. Justin Varava, he contrasts that with a scene between Ellen and a friend of hers named Edna, who actually runs a gallery in the town. And Edna really likes what Helen has done. Like, she's got some samples. She's also done a portrait of Edna for her. And Edna says, you've got to consider putting your stuff on display. We can make a lot of money because you've got this natural talent, this gift. And of course, Helen is very apprehensive because she thinks, well, I can't do this because Gene wouldn't like it. And Edna's trying to like just basically subtly tell her like, to heck with Gene. Like, it's not his talent. It's not him doing this stuff. It's you. And for Edna saying like, it is my job to be able to tell when art is good and when art is bad, because that's what I sell at my gallery to make money. And when I see your stuff, it's like, I can make money off of this, and you can make a lot more off of that. And it kind of puts Helen, in that position that she's now got a fork in her road. Like, what is she going to do? Is she going to go, paint some things to put on display in the art gallery, or is she going to go back to the road that she's familiar with? Toiling away, boring days with Gene, who's retired. All he does is sit on his lazy boy and watch various sports games and drink his beer, which sounds really horrible for retirement. I mean, like, he could go fishing. I mean, he collects and cleans his guns, which I think is okay, but that's like a weekly thing. But like, he could go fishing or hunting.
The man joined what was armed? So the man joined the Marine Corps. He doctored his own birth certificate to join the Marine Corps when he was 16.
Yep.
He went to Vietnam, and then a bomb or an artillery shell or something like that blew up the hole he was in, and he was sent straight back. He was after you'd back sent, the States. And then you talk about his guns. So let's Have a look at his guns. He's got a Winchester 44,
Yep.
a centre fire rifle, a World War Two one. So World War Two Colt 45s, so
Hmm.
they're extremely rare at that point in time. And a officer's trapdoor Springfield Armory rifle. So these guns are incredibly rare in terms of the time period I think it's going to set in. So obviously the man's going to look at it and go, I'm a bit of a gun nut. I like my guns, you know.
Hmm.
I'm not saying anything bad about people who like guns. You
No,
do,
no.
you do.
I mean, he's got a collection of
Yeah.
guns that are actually quite, revered, not just for their design and their use, but it's also, I mean, he's not packing um,
Like a
a number of
Glock.
guns to the level where you'd have to roll your eyes and go, okay, come on. Like, even if you were the
Yeah,
last person against a tyrannical government, you're not even going to get through all of those, even if they never hit you. Like,
I mean, I know that the English increased the tea tax, and that's why, you know,
mhm. That
America
whole
had the holidays.
3%, man. Yeah.
Yeah, both 3%, you know. But absolutely, you're right. And if the man opened up a cupboard and it was like a safe full of guns, then it'd be different. But absolutely, you're right. And I quite like the fact that I went and looked into these individual weapons myself. I mean, I know what a 45 is.
Hmm.
You know, I know these different. There was a couple of ones I didn't know. I looked into them, and they're very, very pretty weapons. You know, they're very pretty in terms of you can understand why he, as an ex-marine, would like to keep these sort of weapons round about him. You know, they're different ranges, etc. for them. But anyway,
Yeah, I mean, there's two areas here. The first is, of course, he went through the basic training to be a Marine, was deployed on his first deployment. Something went wrong, a big explosion, kind of destroyed most of his unit, and then he was shipped back and never came back to fight. Um, and and from there on out, I would say he's been collecting these guns to try to maintain the short time of him being a Marine without actually any real combat experience, like just the one combat experience, which, don't get me wrong, very brave to do. Um, but I'm pretty sure with some joviality among some Marines, because I do know a few when I was living out in California for my periods of time out there, that they do like to tease. And it's like, okay, you did one
right.
deployment. It was a good deployment, but you only did one, and I did three. And sometimes they kind of josh around that. It's not really done in any sense of like to downplay or you know, insult the person. It's just kind of like, we know you're going to get more or whatever type of. You're still part of the, the brotherhood there. But
military thing. It's a military thing.
Yeah.
You rib everybody's ribbed.
Everybody's ribbed. It's
So
it's part of the ways to show that you're on the same playing field with everybody else. Even if your skills are better or just have different skills that are superior, still one and all type of thing. Be all you can be type of stuff in the army, and every man has to look out for the other men on in their combat unit. That type of camaraderie, because you're only as strong as your weakest link, and you want to make sure nobody's dragging you down, so that it's your job to make sure you can pick them all up and keep going.
so
But Gene here is
yeah,
all
but
alone because he has no other friends. He just has his wife. And you raise a good you have to raise a question when you're reading this, is like, well, why is he so all alone at this age?
indeed,
Because
that
Helen
was
has
the
a
question.
friend, Son has friends,
Yeah.
Gene's nobody. It's weird.
It's never ever extrapolated on either. Let's be honest. It's never ever given any sort of point in it. It's just given like the man sits there, drinks beer, watches baseball, and you're like,
Mm-hmm.
all right, fine, whatever. So where does he get his money from? I mean, we know what Helen did. So you look at it and you go, right, okay, fine. So he's just going to be, whatever. He's wasting his life away, etc. But going back to the street side,
Mm-hmm.
where Dwayne, Benji, and
Rodney.
Rodney are sitting after the gun was pulled, and let's be honest, there was a bit of a joke there. It's a bit of a kind of dark joke, but no,
Mm-hmm.
I'm with it. So Dwayne decides to hatch a plan. Here's my plan. I want to go rob the Quick Mart.
Oh, was
Let's
it
go there.
Dwayne that did that, or is it Or is it Rodney that said that?
Maybe
Because someone
Rodney.
did. One of the three did do say that they wanted
Yeah.
to rob the quick mart.
I think it was. I think it might have been Rodney actually, because it was Benji that said, "Remember that so whatever his name was did it
Yeah.
and got shot dead, and that instantly died instantly." So it shows Dwayne in of himself saying, "Oh my God, I really need to get a lot of money, like now, not like in a couple of days."
No,
At this early point,
like 10 hours. Like, cause I think
yeah,
it was Benji that offered that suggested robbing the quick mart because another guy
yeah,
did that, and then both Rodney and Dwayne be like, no, that guy got killed during that robbery. We don't want to do that. And then Benji, because he's the perpetual stoner, he's like, oh damn, yeah, that's right. Well, I guess you're out of luck then. And then that's when Dwayne. Oh no, that's when Rodney I think talks about. Well, your dad's got a lot of really unique guns, like rare guns. That could be worth something. And Dwayne's like, yeah, that could be worth something if I wanted to do that. And he starts hatching that plan. And then at the end of that scene, he basically says, hey, would you two guys be interested in making some money? Because I can't do it myself, but if I got two other people to do it, that'd be that wouldn't incriminate me and it wouldn't incriminate you. It'd be enough confusion, at least so he thinks. And these two idiots agree. And before we follow through with that, we are now introduced to, I guess, the D plot of the story, and that is, well, why is Dwayne in this way? And he's in this way because him being kind of drunk and disorderly and maybe kind of lashing out at his wife. Well, she kicked him out. They got a divorce. He also lost custody of his 4-year-old boy named Bo. And he was called by the school to come in because Bo has been acting up in class. He's been crying a lot, and he's been pulling on girls' hair. And this scene here, I would say is probably the weakest scene because it does go on a couple of pages before we get to the actual conflict. And by the time you think we're about to get there, that's when Dwayne is introduced. And now you've got this three-way conversation between Minnie, Dwayne, and the school teacher, kind of being it's a clever exposition dump, but it goes on for like 6 or 7 pages. It feels a little longer than the rest of the story up until this point.
To me, when I read it, I was like, like, why are you having this conversation in front of the preschool teacher?
Yeah.
She's going to be watching this like a hawk. She's going to be going, social services needs to come and get this kid. So I mean, you two are clearly dysfunctional. I love the write up that they gave Minnie. So Minnie, late 20s, tough and tattooed.
Yeah.
And you're like, I don't need to know she's tough or tattooed. I don't need to know that. I don't care. Do you know what I mean? It's like, don't tell me that. I don't need to know that. But however, it obviously fits the narrative of that particular character. And I'm like, right, okay. And then it was like, they had, what, 3 pages themselves just arguing.
Well,
like
arguing so much that you understand why Minnie is referred to as tough, because she is lashing out pretty heavily with a little bit of language and a lot of accusations to Dwayne. And what's funny is that even the teacher is kind of raising an eyebrow over this, where she's like leans a little bit towards Dwayne's side because he's showing more care about the kid, where Minnie's just kind of showing resentment to Dwayne, calling out immediately that he hasn't paid child support and that he doesn't have custody of Bo and he's not supposed to be there. And we later find out that even Bo doesn't have Dwayne's surname. It's her name, Vowel. So like she's really kind of taken a lot of agency in this relationship that she had with Bo, to basically always remark like, yep, he's. Well, it always makes me kind of scratch my head, even when I encounter these situations in real life, where you have a woman who hates her ex and calls him all these things, and you have to ask yourself, well, like, what? Why were you with him in the first place? Like, how long did it take you to figure this out? Because it looks worse on you to acknowledge that than it does the fact that he's the bad guy in the situation, and also vice versa. Like I have some friends that dated some women that are like, yeah, she was crazy, and I had to ask, it's like, how long did it take you to figure that out? and the answer is always bad.
You're absolutely right, and there's always going to be some vulgarity and some swearing in there on
Yeah.
both sides, isn't there? But no, you're absolutely right. I just thought that, see, adding that in when she appeared, I'm like, right, I get the point, right? I get the exes, I get the point of this.
Right.
But like, I mean, poor Dwayne had what, half a page with a diatribe where he's just talking about he's apologising for this and that, and he's missing his son, and you know,
Right.
and the preschool teachers just sitting there looking, going, I like you more than I like her. And that's quite refreshing nowadays. Let's be honest, that's very refreshing.
Well,
in
yeah,
today's
because she's paying
climate.
attention to what's on the forefront of the mind of these parents. Like, Dwayne is like, okay, I'm here because you called me about my kid. What's wrong with my kid? And every time Minnie's kind of bring up stuff why he shouldn't be there, he's just kind of like saying, okay, yeah, I get that. I'm sorry. I'm trying to do better. But what's going on with my boy? And then when the teacher starts saying, well, he's been crying, he's like, well, you know, crying's not a big deal. I did that as a kid, as, you know, as odd as it is to say. You just kind of have to let it out. And he's trying to be supportive and defensive of his son. And then when the teacher says he's also pulling on the hair of girls, and Dwayne's like, well, that's weird, because why would he do that? And, of course, me thinking back into those days, usually if you tug a girl's hair, it's because you like her, because that's how you kind of express at that point.
Now we're showing our age, so we'll just leave that there, shall we? You know, we'll park that one for a later conversation.
Right. But what Dwayne actually says here is like, well, pulling on girls' hair, that's a girly thing, isn't it? That I don't believe that Bo would do that. And of course, Minnie tries to bring up, is like, well, you haven't been around. And of course, Dwayne throws it back. It's like, you took custody away from me. I only can do whatever I can find out, from you. And that creates a little bit of empathy from Miss Wick, who's the teacher. But again, they basically say, like, listen, we're going to work together on this and see if we can help out Bo, the kid. Dwayne gets to see his boy come out of the out of the faculty office, and Bo is very timid kid. He only says a couple of words at most, which is actually a very smart thing to do when you're a writer and you're integrating a child. Don't give them a lot of dialogue. It's really hard to find a kid that looks like they're 4 years old and knows how to read and say a script, or even reiterate lines back when you say them to them, and do it well enough that you can actually say, "Oh, yeah, they've got a talent there." But we get this nice little monologue here where Dwayne is just trying to show he loves his kid and he's so proud of him. He's like, "Look, you're handsome and you're smart, just like your old man." And there's brilliant irony to that, because we know Dwayne's not a smart guy. We know that he's kind of he's aware that he's not in a good position right now, but he's saying these things, and we later find out as a payoff, he's saying them because this is the stuff his dad never told him. Like, his dad never showed any positive emotion to him at all, and Dwayne does not want to be that to his kid. And when you get to that point in later on the script, it hits really hard, because you see, this is a guy that is actually trying, and he's just doesn't have his wits about him to make the right decisions when pressure starts to build.
Yeah.
And
I mean, I found it personally when I read that bit, and I was like, my dad never showed me love. I'm like, oh god, here we go again. Do you know what I mean? But we know Gene is not nice anyway by this point.
Right.
But you're like, oh god, here we go. It's going to be one of these ones. My daddy didn't love me, and da 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 da. But the way it was written, I quite enjoyed. It was actually well written in terms of.
It wasn't a blame game. That's the thing. It's more like,
yeah. That's
it's the traditional aspect of, because you'll have a story with let's say two characters where both of them have terrible fathers. You have one that blames all of his bad situations on the fact that he has a terrible father, and then you have the other one who's like, I had a terrible father that screwed me up, but I'm going to work my butt off to not repeat those mistakes to my kid. So you're basically showing a motivational line here where one character is trying to do better and the other character is dwelling on the flaws that they had no control over, and trying to hold a third party to account as opposed to taking action on their own. and that's kind of the difference here. Now, the thing is that you can have both those characters work, but one has to be usually the one that's regretful, that's dwelling on stuff, should be the antagonist that's kind of messing around with everybody else's story, and then the other one who's trying to do better is your protagonist because they have identified a problem and they're trying to overcome that obstacle so that they can do better in their life. And where the other person has identified a problem and instead of trying to become better, they're trying to get revenge. And and those are just two samples of the same relative backstory. But they're not the only two examples you can do to play around with this. You can still go into other areas. And for this situation here, because the writer wanted to make Dwayne this type of empathetic character who's silly, kind of dumb, very desperate, and desperation leads to mistakes, he creates a lot of empathy doing that because the other part too that we also see is when Benji and Rodney are smoking pot. Dwayne's not doing it. he is staying sober. The only thing we ever see him do is like sip a beer, and then on top of that, we never see him kind of lash out. We don't see him kind of fall into alcoholism or just kind of trying to get wasted and drunk and not do anything. We actually see Gene do that more. Like Gene is always drinking a beer, and he's almost never stopped drinking a beer. There's always one in his hand, or if it's empty, he throws it into the trash can and grabs another one. So we see this type of contrast here, and I dug it because even though the school scene was really long, I liked the fact that it makes Dwayne a little bit more empathetic, and we understand why Minnie is resentful. We don't always agree with how she lashes out at him, but that's really for drama purpose. Like she is trying to be the person that can justify the result of their relationships. Like she's trying to justify herself as like, I've got sole custody, it's my kid. I don't need him other than for money. And it's like, okay, you're one of those characters. That's okay, cool. And then we kind of learn that as Dwayne and Minnie kind of keep talking back and forth a little bits here and there, that the moment Dwayne says, I might have some money, she gets way nicer to him.
She does.
and
and you just go, I know what he's saying. I know what you're all about.
Right.
That was my thought. I went, okay, no problem.
So now we get into like our inciting incident, and it is kind of played a little funnily because you have Helen is just kind of sitting in the living room. She's folding laundry. Gene is sitting on his lazy boy couch. He's got the remote in his hand and beer in another, and they're watching the ball game on low volume, like not too loud. So there's clearly some sort of rule was established here in the home. And as they're toiling away, they hear two people outside kind of talking, and causes them both to like raise an eyebrows, like what's going on outside? And so he mutes the TV, and they hear these voices saying like, what are we looking for? It's supposed to be something under a fake rock, what have you. It's like they're basically looking for a key to break into the home and the front door. And that's literally what happens. Like Gene doesn't even move. Helen doesn't know what to do, but yeah, someone unlocks the front door, and then these two guys wearing pantyhose over their face and holding a gun, each holding one's holding a shotgun, one's holding a revolver, and they come in there and they're like, okay, this is a robbery, nobody move, and we want your antique guns. And Gene just looks at him cold face, is like, I don't know what antique guns you're talking about. I don't have anything here. And this throws off the crooks, who are later revealed to be Benji and Rodney. Like they're shocked that, wait a minute, he's not cooperating.
Yeah, I thought this scene was very well written.
Yeah.
In terms of what the writer was attempting to do. I thought it was very well written.
Mm-hmm.
It shows the bumbling idiots as they are. As soon as he says he's not moving, he doesn't even. I think he arches an eyebrow.
Yeah.
Once, and you're like, and you're like, yeah, that guy's an ex-marine. You're not going to scare him with a stub nose and a shotgun. And well, obviously, you lead into the next part. But I thought personally it was very well written, very well written.
well, it's a good status game here. You have Helen, who's terrified and is so terrified. She's terrified of what might happen to her. She's terrified what might happen to Jean. She's also terrified about what she knows, and also she's terrified of what happens if she says what she wants to say, and how Jean was going to react to that. Then you've got Rodney and Benji. They're in there. They're terrified too because they've never done this before, and they're trying to be intimidating. And then you got Jean, who he is scared, but the thing is he doesn't show it, and he's really just kind of sticking to his own principles, which is, I'm not telling these guys anything. I can tell that they're cowards. They're not going to do anything. They're not going to harm us. All I got to do is stand my ground, and they're going to go away. And there's, from a third person's perspective, there's no way you could ever assume that he'd be 100% correct on that.
Absolutely not, especially knowing the South. I mean, let's be honest, it's set in the South somewhere.
Set in Georgia, so there are some people who are a bit more aggressive there, I have heard, but again, you always have those in every region in every country. This year, the screenplay is trying to say that it's such a small town that even with the limited crime that they do have, it does actually cross the line, because they just talked about how that guy robbed the other store, the Quick Mart, and he got shot. So you can tell that these people in this town, they're willing to enact castle doctrine if that so needs to be. And here we have Gene, who he's not armed, but the only thing I think he really does aside from raising an eyebrow is he kind of adjusts, because he has a necklace that has the key to his weapons cabinet, and he adjusts that so that it can't be seen in his collar. And all he's basically saying is, like, you were informed of the wrong information there, kids. Why don't you go home and play with your squirt guns somewhere else? Type of attitude. And even when they like press a gun up against Gene's head, he doesn't flinch, doesn't sweat, nothing. And what ends up happening is, I think Benji decides to attack Helen, and he ends up hitting her in the face with the butt of his shotgun, breaking her nose. And Gene doesn't do anything, and this is where you're like, okay, now you really hate Gene, because one, he doesn't react. Two, he doesn't ask if Helen's okay. He just kind of stares coldly at them and says, whatever it is you're here for, it's not here, and you're not going to do anything. And then Rodney ends up shooting off one round, like right by Gene's head, blasting a hole in the rear of the wall right by the kitchen. And Gene just doesn't waver, and he basically just says, like, whoever told you this information, you got bad information. And these guys are like, we don't know what to do anymore. Like, we're freaking out. We've hit, even one person, even Benji says, sorry, Mrs. Bog. So he knows, he just reveals that he knows their name. Of course, the information about, like, hey, we know you have guns in here. You probably have a pretty good understanding about who's inside this home to a degree. If you said there's guns and you know where they are, and so they end up just kind of frustrating. Like they kick the coffee table and break it, and they just kind of run away. And at that point, I was like, okay, so is Gene going to check on his wife? No, he doesn't.
We spoke about this off camera, right? And this is the point where you look at it and you go, Gene is an absolute pure narcissist.
Yep.
He's, honestly, you just love him. You maybe disliked him at the start and you thought, aye, right, you're a bit, maybe set in your own ways kind of thing. I mean, they are in their 60s, so he's maybe set in his own ways, that kind of thing. Mm-hmm. Especially by today's standards, or by the date I reckon this was written for. But when that happens and your wife gets hit in the face, if your wife got hit in the face with a shotgun, a butt end of a shotgun, right, you're not exactly going to sit there and go, hello?
Oh, hey, I think, you probably hit something and disconnected your camera, but let's get you back on there. There we go, you're back. Okay, as you were saying, sir.
sorry. Sorry.
Don't worry about it. It's okay. We caught it good.
And if your wife got hit in the face with a butt of a shotgun, right? I don't care who's got a gun in front of you. You're going to jump to your wife.
Yeah.
You're going to try and stop that. You're going to try and protect your partner. You're going to, obviously, you love that person enough to marry them, or love that person enough to be with them that long. But you're not going to let anything happen to them. And I read it and I went, I had to read it twice, and I went, he's still sitting there. And then after it, he's like, you can carry on with that one.
Well, then after that, he doesn't check in on her. He just says, I knew they weren't going to do it. And then as she's crying, he's like, enough of that crying. You better go call the police and let them know what happened. It's like, you're not even going to pick up the phone? Like yourself? You're going to let her do it?
And the fact that he went round in his lazy boy and started watching the baseball while talking to her to obviously off right or off left.
Yeah.
You're like, oh, I hate you. You know what I mean? That hatred building as you're reading the script. And you're like, excuse me, you want to empathise more with Helen, but then you're like, Pear Woman's a absolute shell and a husk.
Yeah, I mean, the life that she wanted has clearly been suppressed by Gene. If this is his attitude when a panic is occurring, when a definitely difficult time is being presented to them, and I'm like, I thought this, yeah, Gene's a character you like to hate, and I like the contrast of this because it's really strong in the Coen brothers type of mindset here. It's like they just are not. They have no idea what they're doing, and then we cut to Dwayne, who's basically at this baseball field that's been closed up for the night, and he gets a call on his phone from Benji, and they're like, yeah, so it didn't go as planned, and this conversation is happening while Benji and Rodney are in the drive-thru getting food because the adrenaline rush has made them super hungry, and while we're having this three-way conversation between Benji, the drive-thru attendant, and Dwayne, they're bringing up the idea of like, we want recompense for our troubles, which I thought was ridiculous because it's like you failed. Like, we want paid to fail. That's not how this works.
As it's written, it's like, yeah, we expect recompense. It's like, no. You never provided the materials, so therefore you don't get paid for a job not done. And it's like $1,000, something like that, they were meant to be getting, or something like that.
I don't even think it was that much, but it was funny though.
Yeah, and you're like, come on, guys, you're just a bunch of scumbags. Your mates asked you to do something for you, just do, what they asked. And obviously, the drive-through scene was quite funny. I liked that.
I thought it was funny too because the logic was really terrible, and here you have Dwayne, who he doesn't push back on it. He just questions it like it's absurd because they're saying, yeah, we think you should still pay us what you agreed for our trouble and all. It's like, your trouble? Like, nothing. Yeah, it's like it didn't work out, but we still went in there. We put ourselves in harm's way. I think it might have broke your mom's nose. And in which case he admits that. He's like, wait a minute, you want me to pay you to break my mom's nose? That's not what we did at all. Like, you weren't even supposed to touch her. And it's very absurd. And this is kind of where you realize, like, okay, yeah, there's some interesting tone going on here. It's definitely contrasts with something that's more dry coming from Gene and Helen. But this one is very much in the absurd, where you realize, like, yeah, part of Dwayne's problem is that he associates with these types of idiots here. And it just made me go back to be thinking, like, man, I wish we got some more Patrice, because I liked that character. I liked how he was kind of like wanting to be helpful, but he's also giving some, urgency and stakes to Dwayne on what's going on. It felt like he was a guy that had a better head on his shoulders than Benji and Rodney. And it's pretty... It was a pretty funny scene. The other thing I also thought is, I think it is actually probably maybe 10, it's supposed to be like 2015 or something, because they got like 2 full meals at a drive-thru for like $14 and change, which is a pretty good rate. But then again, it's in Georgia, so maybe, things are cheaper out there. It's been 9 years since I've been there, so I can't remember how much it's been, how much it was to buy drive-thru. Don't usually go through drive-thru myself, so... but regardless, like, yeah, we have this kind of funny scene where, and this is clearly like a throwaway thing. We know Dwayne's not going to pay these guys because they've screwed up. Like, he's got to figure out something else. And then we get introduced to probably one of our, your mind, maybe our favorite character, and that's Ralph Stansell, who's the sheriff's deputy.
Yes.
So share with us a little bit about Ralph, your first impressions of him.
So I liked how Ralph was written. I liked how he was of a similar age to Helen and Jean,
Hmm.
sheriff deputy. And when he went into the room, obviously, so this is after the failed gun stealing. He's in. Jean's been Jean's usual fabulous self, where he's just not caring, keeps staring at Helen, like basically don't say anything, don't say anything, etc. I'll talk type thing.
Hmm.
Helen's obviously wanting to speak. Ralph eventually breaks through to her and brings a bit of Helen out, and you can see he's like empathising where he's like, I'm really sorry, and his eye darting towards Jean as if to say, this guy's a bit of
I,
not a nice guy, like what I mean.
Ralph
Um,
clocks Gene like almost immediately. He knows exactly the type of guy he is. I think what's kind of funny is you can tell at some point when even Ralph is like recording their statements, he's doing it in a way that's irking Gene because even Gene's like
yeah,
commenting like whatever it is you're putting in that notebook there, you know.
just the extended interrogation that Jean felt he was going through.
Yeah.
That really made me laugh. No, absolutely, and you can see that he's more. He knows that Helen's going to give him more information, but she's terrified to speak because of her husband, Jean. So you could see that he's like, right, okay, well, if you need anything, like absolutely anything, and he's looking at Jean, there's my card, give me a phone,
Yep.
I'll come and help. Whatever is needed done, I'll come and help.
Oh
And I
yeah.
like that. That was nice. I like that. I liked him as a character. I thought he was very good.
I thought Ralph was pretty good. I also liked how even Ralph's presence was actually lighting a little bit of a fire under Gene because he was basically trying to say like the reason this happened the way it happened is because I knew how strong my wife was and that she could take it. And
And also,
he's trying to throw her a compliment, but it's really not coming out that way.
also the other one where Ralph went, "Do you know who done this?" And he's like, he spoke about a pharmacist, and he chased guys away from the back of the pharmacist that were doing methamphetamines and
Methamphetamines in
like,
the alley, yeah, and
trying
messing
and
around, yeah.
silly. Yeah, there was like a stupid word that's not a word. There was like drugs. It just shows you how like ignorant he actually is in terms of where he is in the world. But no, I like that. I liked Ralph. I liked him as a character. I thought he was well written at the start. Well written in terms of
Empathetic. I mean, he's definitely the type of guy who, like, he sees Helen, he likes Helen. You could see for Helen, she's looking at him as like, if I didn't have Gene here, I'd probably be with this guy, because
yeah.
he's showing humanity in his in his behavior, and Helen hasn't seen that in a man her age in a long time. I would assume, and what's funny is that even like Gene is trying to say like they're it's my property. They're not entitled to it. Doesn't matter what who they threaten me. They threaten my wife. They threaten my family. We can't go around just capitulating to criminals. And you're like, I understand the desire to not capitulate to criminals, but if you, I mean, it's all this time here is like if you don't have access to a means to defend your property, then it's kind of really arrogant to just sit there and let these people do what they did, hoping that they're going to go away on their own, when most likely, in most situations, they're just going to kind of end you and take whatever they want afterwards.
Exactly. I mean that's it. I
Yeah.
mean it's one of those ones where he's sitting like, well, I'm an ex-marine, you're not going to touch me type idea.
Right.
And it's like, no, well, mate, that's in the real world. They put two in your face, one in your chest, and be done with it. Do you know what I mean? And they just go take what they want, and that bit, and they'd be away. But absolutely you're right. And Ralph, I find, was a very nice character in terms of, from that point, the script to me personally, I felt was quite heavy in terms of like the what was going on with like Helen and Jean and that, and
Mm-hmm.
then having Ralph kind of a breath of fresh air, like that kind of like white knight type idea, like that kind of white knight type guy. He's like, yeah, I can see you've been done wrong, and I'm here if you need me. I'm here, like kind of thing. Sorry, my headphones are falling off. Sorry.
Oh yeah, no
Uh,
worries, no worries. And
and
this was it was a nice scene because it did exactly what it was supposed to do. It was supposed to show that um, Helen can meet people that'll actually be human and kind to her That's not her husband. It's showing a little bit of temptation, but it's also showing a reinforcement as to why you can understand Helen would feel connected to Ralph so quickly, so easily, when her husband, literally, like since the scene that opened up with them, just she doing she folding laundry and him on this lazy boy, he hasn't left that chair. Like he's still there the entire time, and you can feel like, okay, yeah, this is really a bad situation for Helen to be in. It may be comfortable and it may be feel safe because she's so used to it, but the moment Ralph comes in, I mean, she kind of starts to light up afterwards when she sees him, when he starts asking her questions and saying, like, very brave, and when Jean's trying to imply that some of what happened to her, like getting her nose broken, was partially her fault, and Ralph is immediately able to say, well, no, you can't really justify that. The reason they struck her is because you put value over your property, your property over your wife.
I have it written down here, right, that
yeah,
like Gene would have been happy for his wife to be shot dead to keep his guns.
Yeah, he would have been unfazed. In fact, he'd probably feel upset because now he has to be the one that has to call the police. Or I don't even think he would call the police, because there is something we'll get to a little bit later, where he all he does is just lets things lie where they are.
He shrugs at one point, doesn't he? He goes like that. He shrugs.
Yeah, pretty much.
Like when the deputy's talking. Sorry, I forgot his name. He was talking, right? And he just shrugs. And you're like, mate, your wife just got hit butt ended with a shotgun. Like, why you even, like, what? But anyway, moving on. Because I really dislike Gene.
Yeah, well, I mean heck. I mean, you want a good antagonist in your story. I mean, you really do, yes. Especially one that had this nice little ripple effect onto the people around him, and Gene fulfills that quite well.
Yes.
And his arrogance gets reinforced by the fact that in some cases things have kind of worked out for him in a way at the expense of other people. And so after we leave Helen's place, we're following Dwayne while he's kind of freaking out. He's like, okay, this whole operation went bad. I don't have the money. I'm not going to be able to get the money. I got to figure out another way to do that. And as he's driving along, he ends up getting stopped by this guy named Hollis, and Hollis is a bigwig in the underground markets of drugs and illicit material. And he basically kind of snatches Dwayne out of his car through his henchman Lawrence, throws him into the back of their car, and they drive. Where Hollis basically says, you owe $8,000 to Patrice, and Patrice owes that money to me. So you technically, let's cut out the middleman. You owe me $8,000, and if I don't get it, it's going to ruin my reputation because I'm not a generous person. At least I'm not that generous of a person. And he goes through this story about how Patrice's family, they came from, I think, Detroit. They spent all their time and money buying this home that they're driving up to. And when they drive up to the home, the lights are on. Lawrence gets out, walks up to the door, opens it. And then as Hollis is talking about, saying, like, I know a lot about you, Dwayne. I know where your parents live. I know where your ex-wife lives. I know your little boy, Bo. And then in the background, you see two flashes of light from a gun muzzle, and then Lawrence just walks right out with a little bit of blood splatter on his face, grabs a rag and starts cleaning it off. And I was just thinking, man, yep, that's very much something you'd see in a Fargo. Just play a conversation of threat and have some action in the background that kind of really shows the commitment level of this other antagonist threatening Dwayne's life and essentially threatening his family. His parents are being threatened, and his ex-wife and child are being threatened. And Hollis gives him a ticking clock of, you have only a couple of days to get me my money, or what's happened to Patrice will happen to you. And then this is also the part that's kind of funny. They return him back to the four-way stop where they picked him up when his car's still there. Like nothing's happened in the hour or so this has transpired. And yeah, Dwayne is really kind of just. I mean, he's screwed. He has no idea what he can do next. And then it gets even worse because the following morning, they're at their job with Rodney and Benji, and the owner's like, "Yeah, I gotta fire you because the guy complained."
He worked with Benji's dad, didn't he? He gave Benji's dad a chance.
Yeah,
He
bad.
never have a fight with the other two to get a job, but he gives Benji. He said to Benji's dad, who was his friend, I'll take him under my wing,
Yeah, I'll take him
and
under
then
your
go.
wing, and I'll give him the shot, but it's up to him to pull it off. And again, these are 30-year-old men. Like they should be in a lot more stable than they actually are. But then again, nobody's perfect. But yeah, basically
The
the
mathematical point with butter, 2 points, 8 points higher than butter.
and so the guy tells him like, there's no apologizing at this point. You got all three of you are done. And so Dwayne's like really screwed because he's like, I don't even have a source of income now. I'm never going to be able to pay this off. He even when he does call Minnie, and he's about to basically say like, I've got that windfall that I was talking about at the school. Yeah, I don't think that's gonna happen. So you and Bo better find a place to go because I need you guys to be safe. And she's of course freaking out. Like, what did you do this time? Like, it's almost as if
Yeah.
this is old hat for her. And he's just like, whatever it is, just tell Bo I love him, and I want you guys to be safe, and I'm gonna figure this out. And she's just immediately hangs up, and you can tell like this has been something that's occurred before. Clearly, nowhere near its level of the escalation that it has come to at this point, but there's been some sort of like promise and then failure to meet that promise type of thing, and then.
You missed about it.
Well, and then we get to Helen painting another portrait. And this time she paints a portrait where there's no faces, but everything else about it is like immaculate. And as she's looking over to the side of the shed, she notices some old rodent poison. And we immediately cut to her cooking dinner. And she's making a roast. And her eyes kind of dart between the roast and the poison, back and forth a few times, and eventually she just like throws it all in there. And I'm thinking, well, now she can't eat that either. This is the whole thing. And she basically calls out for dinner, and Gene, he gets up, he goes to the table, he's got his newspaper, still reading it, and he's noticing that it's taking a little longer for the meal to come out, and then we hear a crash, and Helen is on the ground, and she's dropped the pan, the porcelain pan that had the roast in it, and she's cleaning it up, and she says, I'll fix you something else because I dropped it. And I mean, it shows a little bit of the humanity in Helen's. Like, even though she desires to get rid of Gene, she can't bring herself to do it. And Gene, of course, is like, well, that's wonderful. Okay. And then just kind of like walks away and lets her back to her thing.
Yeah, you just absolutely hate him even more. The more and more you read about him, and the more you're just like, yeah, I absolutely hate you. Absolutely, and so the thing is as well was that as you're going through Helen's arc, as we're going through it so far, as you're seeing it hollowed out, no spark, and then she met Ralph, and then there's other things, her painting and stuff like that, and then you start to see, we get to this part, you're like, Edna as well, she gave her a bit of a spark as well, and then you're like, oh, you're getting a little bit of a spark now, Hen. I like that. I like to see you a wee bit of fire in your belly, knowing that what's happening to you is wrong, kind of thing. So
Yeah.
I enjoyed that personally.
No, I like the fact that she's kind of coming to the realization that it's not like her sadness that she's been burying all this time. It's come to the surface, but it's come to the surface in the sense that she now completely has connected why she's sad, and it's all focused on Gene. And she makes efforts that night when she's like, I need you to talk to me about something because I'm trying to think something out. I'm different. I need to change. I want to do something. And Gene doesn't care. In fact, he's so annoyed because he was so close to falling asleep. He's now like, I'm going to be up for who knows how long before I fall asleep again. And that's
Before I
what's
get back to what I was, that's what he said. Before I get back to what I was,
yeah.
and you're like, oh mate, just shut up and just do yourself, man. Do you know what I mean? Just give your wife a cuddle. That's all she wants. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah. And it's really like tragic because she's trying to like reach out to him to see, is there something of a man there that got me to this position in the first place, or has it always really been like this? And you get a sense with Gene that he's very static in his ways, where he's thinking, you know what, yeah, all I care about is just trying to go to sleep. And listen, all you're making is excuses, and you're trying to find something to be good and useful at, and all this type of, aspects here. You're talking about our kid who, you know he's terrible. I don't like him. We tried with him. He failed. You coddled him too much, and the discipline that I gave him didn't took. He's a loser. He's all these things. Why are you wasting your time on him? Just listen. We're done. We're in our twilight years. Let me go back to sleep.
I know, but that's why you hate him.
Yeah.
You never talk about your child like that, you scumbag. Do you
Yeah.
know what I mean? Like your child could be whatever. It's still your child. You don't like, oh, you loved them too much and didn't let me, whatever. You're like, mate, geese peace. Do you know what I mean? It's your son. At the end of the day, he's the one that's kept your lineage running.
Yep.
You're not, because really you sit and drink beer and you're a lazy boy and watch baseball. Let's be honest, baseball's just rounders with extra steps, right?
Yep.
Yes, happy 4th of July weekend.
Well, we haven't
But
insulted
no,
football yet, so we're okay.
yeah, all said in jest, in jest.
Yeah.
No, but point is the fact that you're growing to hate him more, and you're like, right, okay, so she's attempted it once, she couldn't do it. That's her humanity. She's trying to talk to him. He makes a massive deal about turning around and actually looking at her, because in the actual script, there is enough room between them. You could probably put another two people.
Yep.
You know what I mean? There's no
Connection
like,
there. There's no intimacy. Yeah.
there's no intimacy, there's no cuddling, there's no like maybe like lying over one night and maybe touching your partner and like nothing like that. And then you're like, okay, right, fine. So I want to talk, and he's like, oh, he doesn't swear, but you know what I mean, that kind of thing, right? And he turns around and he wants to talk, and then just totally belittles her the whole thing.
Yep.
And you're like, I could just strangle you. As a guy, I could.
How does Helen not strangle him, right? Like,
Exactly. You're like, oh my goodness graciously, like, oh my god, like this poor woman is like a huskier person, and she's starting to get a bit of spark. No, obviously as we move on.
but that's the brilliance of it. When she starts to get her spark again, Gene is there to put it out, and
Yeah,
this is the cycle that they've been through, and it just, I mean, it's really clever because you can feel how it is. You can feel from Gene in the writing that this is that he's kind of had these speeches every couple of years with Helen in some variety, and it's always been down the same thing. It's like he's at a point of arrested development. He doesn't want anything to change. He doesn't want anything to grow. He doesn't want to experiment anything. He's perfectly set in his ways. He's the old curmudgeon, and Helen here, she has this hobby that is actually getting her a little bit of attention and encouragement. And we go straight into her talking to Edna, who's basically making another case for her, saying, well, first and foremost, I mean, I could host a gallery of your artwork and we can make some great money. Second part is Edna's kind of like, Helen, my God, it's like your husband was going to let these people kill you and you're still with them. Like, what is wrong with you, woman? She's really appealing to all the logic and humanity in there. And Helen is basically saying, like, I'm like, well, she's trying to admit the fact that she is not nearly as strong as Gene thinks she is, nor does she think she is, or other people wish that she were. We then find out that the whole reason that they're married is because Gene knocked her up while they were dating, and she convinced Gene to have the kid and get married, and Gene never wanted the kid, and now it was her actions that kind of led this to this life, and she doesn't regret at all having Dwayne, but you can clearly tell that she doesn't feel like she's had a good life with Gene at all. So she was doing. So this is where you get into a little bit of controversy that I can see from a couple other types of mindsets here, which is that Helen had the opportunity to start a family, and she wanted to start a family with the person that was the father of her child. But the person that was the father of a child was probably the worst person that could be starting a family with, ever. And
Correct.
I would be more, and you see in those situations, you'd be like, I would rather find someone else. Have the kid if you want the kid. Find someone else that could be the right influence and the right nurturing relationship for you and your child, as opposed to this guy who just happens to be genetically connected to the kid that's growing inside you, and nothing more.
I think it's alluded to as well. It's never stated or
Mm-hmm.
clearly stated anyway, right? We're talking about like obviously her getting knocked up in that, right?
Mm-hmm.
Helen getting knocked up, sorry. Is it was the done thing then that you married the man if it was out of like
Mm-hmm.
wedlock.
Yeah.
And I think that's one of those things. It's never stated anywhere, but it's alluded to the sense that, maybe Gene back in the day was a bit of a bit of a catch, that kind of thing.
Maybe. Yeah.
And obviously one thing led to another. We're not going to insult your intelligence. You all know how kids are made. The stork delivers them, so let's know.
Mm-hmm.
I'll leave it there. But I think that was the kind of gripped me was it added another layer to Dwayne when I read that. And he was like, "His dad didn't want him." It's like, I get that now.
Yep.
I get the point.
Oh yeah. And I like how this kind of sets up the fact that Helen said, I've thought about getting rid of Gene dozen times, but I realized every single time I can't commit to doing it. And because we know in
Yeah.
the two previous scenes prior that she got really close but couldn't commit to doing it, it's something that I don't know. It reminds me a little bit of like the fantasies that Danny DeVito's character had in Throw Mama from the Train, where he keeps on having fantasies of killing his mom because
Oh
she's
my
a
God.
horrible person to him.
She's not
And you
from
feel
you.
like you could make those connections with Helen. And so Helen, after she's had her confab with Edna, who Edna's trying to convince her to do the gallery stuff. She goes to the Piggly Wiggly, a grocery store, and as she's shopping, and even her shopping list is routine. Like she's grabbing the same stuff, but then she'll see something interesting and she'll stare at it for a moment, pondering, do I grab this and maybe spice up the life, or do I have to go through another argument with Jean? So she leaves it as it is. But then she hears Minnie, who's freaking out at her boss because she's arrived late a number of times for work, and Minnie's excuse is she has a terrible babysitter, and on top of that, her kid gets sick all the time, and
Oh,
that's
is
why
that
she's
this, isn't it? Preschools are a petri dish. That's the word we use.
pretty much, yeah. Which it's funny because that kids are definitely quick to get sick, but what's really funny is that even with my godchildren
Yeah.
when they were toddlers, out of the seven, only three of them would be sick like every day for almost a year straight. The other four, it was just really those classes there. They didn't do much on washing hands.
I mean,
And that was basically it.
in Scotland and the UK, right? So it's nurseries here. There's no preschool. Well, there is preschools, but they're
Yeah.
called nursery. And my daughter went to one, and I swear to dead, it wasn't my daughter. She was ill now and again. It was myself, my ex-partner, her mum. We were ill, sick like dogs,
Yeah.
because she's bringing back like to a man out of the flu. I was at death's door. I was sending for the Reaper and sending for the curse.
Yep.
Do you know what I mean? It was horrific. But I sort of got that, and I kind of smiled at that, and I went, anybody that's got kids
Nose. Yep.
will go straight away. You're absolutely right.
Oh yeah, like I
Aye.
used to do this joke. So my oldest godson, when he was 5 years old, he was in the first. He just entered the first grade because he was going to turn six in a few weeks. And when I would be told I have to go pick him up from school, my best friend, who's his dad, would be like, "Yeah, he might be coming home with something, so keep your distance or what have you." But I would play this game where I'd basically just get out the hose and I'd get out a bottle of dish soap, and I'd be like, "Okay, you're coming over here," and I just would hose him down and then throw dish soap on him, and he would just laugh and bounce around in this. But I was basically just like sterilizing him because I didn't want to get sick. Because again,
yeah.
I was going on airplanes like every other month all the
Yeah.
time, so I didn't want to be sick and then spread it there. And of course, my girlfriend at the time, who was his mother-in-law, would like come out of my apartment and be like laughing. It's like, what are you doing to the kids? Like, he's enjoying it. It's like you're hosing him down like he's a rodent. It's like he's kind of an animal. But it was funny because he always had a change of clothes at my place and stuff. All the kids did because they would be over all the time. And so yeah, he'd come home from school, and I'd just jokingly hose. I never did this in the winter because that'd be cruel. But I'd hose him down in the spring and in the summer. And then he'd go inside, he'd get changed and everything, and then we wouldn't really be catching anything. And if we did, we pop some like antihistamine or something and go about our day. But most of the time we just like to have fun of that. But we did have this big rule, like especially when the other two were getting sick like every single day. Like there was points where we couldn't send them to school, so I'd be like going over to my buddy's house to watch them because I could do my writing well there. And then, you're also administering medicine, cold compress, you're running baths for them so that they can kind of get, through the illness. And then the moment that they're good and healthy, you're like, okay, great. It's Tuesday. You're going back to school. And then they come back in the afternoon and, their nose is running and their face is all puffy and they caught something again because the other parents didn't, sent their kid sick to school. And you're like,
you read, as a dad, right, the first time you ever read, like Nurofen or like cough syrup for kids.
Yeah.
And you read it and you go, right, there's age brackets, it's like 1 to 4.
Yep.
And like 5 to whatever, right? And you look at your kid and you're like, how old are you again? And you know exactly how old they are. And you're like, I'll give you 5 mil this time. I'll give you 2.5 last time. I'll give you 5 mil this time. Hopefully you'll sleep this time. Absolutely not. I could completely not relate to what she was saying. And I mean, let's be honest here, right? This was only here to set up the next scene. It wasn't really here. It didn't really give anything. It just gave a point for, well, 2 people to chat.
Yeah, well, it elevates a little bit more stakes and urgency for Dwayne because now we're looking at, okay, Minnie, the mother, has just lost her job at the grocery store. So now she doesn't have any income to support her kid, and we know Dwayne has no money to give her for child support. So we're going to empathize with Bo. But then you have Helen kind of comes up and talks to Minnie, and you could tell that she would like to say, I want to help. But Minnie just doesn't want it. And I got a sense from Minnie, the way she was talking to Helen, had more to do with the fact that she didn't want Bo around Jean.
Yeah.
As opposed to like Helen's help.
She actually states that, doesn't she? She says you're not allowed near him.
Well, she says like Dwayne's not allowed near him. But she basically says you can't come here, talking to me about Bo. And Helen's like, yeah, I get that. And of course she's like, I'm sure you mean well, but it's my kid. And Helen is being really kind of like thoughtful, but she's basically saying, I just, I wanted to see if there's anything I can do. And then Minnie, she completely like makes a 180 because she sees the medical tape on Helen's nose, and she's like, wait, what happened to you? Did Jean do that? And Helen's like, no, it's just a little accident. And of course Minnie's like, yeah, I bet. And then she kind of, we get a sense that that Minnie knows more about what's going on with Helen's life than the rest of the neighborhood. And then, of course, Minnie gives Helen the warning. She's like, listen, Dwayne is into something weird. He showed up at Bo's school talking about some sort of money-making prospect. Maybe, maybe you should keep an eye out. And as Minnie is finishing this little warning to Helen, Helen sees Rodney, who, robbed her the other day. And because Rodney has that neck tattoo, the tentacle thing, she recognized that during the robbery. She literally leaves her shopping cart and excuses herself from Minnie and just starts going towards Rodney. And Rodney makes the connection and just bolts out of there. He's running across the parking lot and he's hopping into his car. And of course, we get that whole he drops his keys and he can't find them on the floor of the car. And then Helen gets right up in his face, is like, hey, you're Rodney Templeton, aren't you? He's like, yes, hi, Mrs. Boggs. He's like, yeah, I thought you were something familiar about you the other day. You know, I was your fourth grade teacher. I used to give you A's. You were a good boy. What happened? And Rodney's like, I'm not exactly sure, ma'am. And and yeah, what was quite fascinating about this is that Helen, you know, she basically puts everything together and says, "Did Dwayne put you up to it? And is he in some kind of trouble?" And he, you know, Rodney's trying to be like he's turned into a kid again. Like he's like a 12-year-old. It's like you better probably ask him about that. And Helen just asked like, well, how much was he gonna pay you? And Rodney didn't know because he says, I don't. Huh? And then he thinks for a minute. He's like, $1,000, $1,000. and Helen's like, for you and your partner? He's like, nods, and he's trying not to make eye contact. And Helen immediately says, well, how's 5,000 sound? And this is where I'm like, this is cool. I'm like thinking, okay, Helen, yeah. And she's basically saying, for going back and finishing what you started. And you know, Rodney's like, you want us to try and take your husband's gun again? She's like, no, I was thinking about more of a permanent solution this time. And she walks away from Rodney, calls up Edna on her own phone, and says, yeah, let's do that gallery as quickly as possible. and
I like that.
Yeah, go right ahead, because this is, I'm like, all right, good for you, Helen. Okay, second attempt in the script.
It says in the script itself, it's like her eyes narrow, she kind of like, not necessarily sets her jaw, but it's like that little spark that was started with Ralph is starting to like grow a bit more, embers are getting bigger, there's a wee bit of fire starting underneath her. And as he drops his keys, you know, the usual trope, he drops his keys, can't find them, looks up, she's standing at the window, you know what I mean? It's like, right, okay. And it's like, yeah, it's like him talking to his old headmistress type thing. You know, like you say, he turned into an absolute little child again. And then, obviously, she's not the headmistress, but I liked it because you could see that starting to come back into her, like a bit of life and a bit of spark and something. She just, because up to that point, she's just a husk of a woman. Do you know what I mean? She's just been treated poorly. And obviously, alluding back to what you said about Minnie, did Jean do that? Well, it's never ever stated, but it's always kind of alluded to.
Yeah.
The domestic violence between Jean and Helen.
Right.
Hence the reason why the poor woman is the way she is. And I like that ending there, and I like going into the car park scene, because then it started getting a bit more. Right, okay, so she's going to do something. She's actually going to do something, and then she picks up her phone, phones Edna, says, right, let's do it. And then goes home.
And then she basically tells Jean, it's like, yeah, I got an art show this weekend, Sunday night at Edna's gallery. Are you interested? And Jean's like, no, not really. No, it's like you've been spending all your money or all my money on those canvases and paints. I'd probably just wind up getting upset seeing that on display. And so Helen kind of like walks away, and she's got this little smile that starts, you know, forming on her mouth, like her plan is in motion. And then workers show up. They carry out all of her canvases very carefully. They put them in a truck, and then she goes off to the gallery to see with Edna as they start setting up all their paintings. And Dwayne is basically just kind of out front of his parents' place, and he's thinking, okay, maybe I'm gonna have to do this on my own. So he sneaks in through the basement window. And this part I thought was fascinating because it gave us a bit more insight into Jean.
Yeah,
but
sorry.
Yeah, Dwayne sneaks around the house while Jean's like grabbing some beer, and Dwayne goes into his old room, and that's where the gun case is. And as he's trying to figure out a way to open it, maybe he was even thinking about breaking the glass with an old baseball trophy he had. He hears his dad coming up through the steps, so he hides in the closet, and he peeks out through a crack, and his dad goes to the gun case, unlocks it, grabs out a Glock, sits on the bed, and then starts to cry for a little bit.
I found this bit extremely. I like the way this was written.
Yeah.
in terms of what they're thinking that Gene's going to do. I thought it was well written. I thought it was well. We don't need to spell it out for you. You can imagine what a man would do with a Glock.
Right.
And I was shocked actually at that level of character development for Gene. I thought, basically at that point, I absolutely loathed the man.
Yeah.
And then a tiny wee bit, I was like, oh my God, like, why? Like, I wanted to know more, kind
Hmm.
of thing. Like, what's this? What's causing this? What's going through your head? Then he just sits up straight, bolt straight, and falls asleep.
Yep. Falls asleep.
And you're like,
And then we get this nice little follow up where Dwayne kind of creeps out. He's looking like, wow, if I get the key, I could probably get the gun cabinet open, but I might wake him up. And he's already got a Glock in his hand. So, and it's his dad, so he's probably going to shoot first before he even takes aim or thinks. And so Dwayne just kind of reluctantly, sneaks back out, makes his way through the basement, closes up behind him, and then just kind of pulls away in his car. Just as Helen kind of pulls up, so she just misses her kid, and she gets she gets into this nice old dress that she's had, saved away, and as she's putting it on and getting her makeup on and touching up her face, she removes the bandages, uses the makeup to kind of hide up the bruising, and this is like the first time where Gene actually gives her a compliment, saying that she looks really good, and
again, I liked how this was written.
yeah, and
I like,
and
yeah.
what's funny is that he's basically like, listen, maybe I ought to come with you to this thing after all. And Helen is like, oh, yeah, sure. I mean, come on. And then he's like, I was only kidding. You only get one compliment and you think the whole world's falling over for you. And you realize,
That's the kind, and you're like,
there is something to Gene underneath the cold exterior, but I think it's something he's afraid of. And I think when he finally kind of had that moment where he said something nice to his wife, and then he feels like, if I keep doing that, I'm going to be lesser of a man, so I'm going to just brush it off and walk away. And then Helen, just says, okay, goodbye, and she heads off to the gallery space, and Gene is just in his lazy boy watching another ball game on TV, drinking his beer. The coffee table has been poorly fixed with like wood glue, and it's not well there, so he's grabbing like coasters and he's wedging it underneath. He's getting more beer, and then over at the gallery, as Helen is kind of walking by her art, looking at it and seeing all these other people kind of showing up in a large numbers, all enamored with her art, she ends up bumping into Ralph, who's there because people in town were talking about Helen having an art show. And
yep.
These two show some chemistry where they're talking, like they're just kind of talking to each other, and you feel like, wow, these two cats they vibe way better than Helen and Gene. And Helen's not doing anything like, betraying Gene at that at all. It's just Ralph is talking like, hey, I'm trying to speak artistically, but I don't know the terminology, but I know this is really good and there's talent here. And Helen kind of uses Edna as a proxy to say, like, well, Edna would tell you that what I'm expressing here is this. And so she's trying to like hide, the emotions here about how and she breaks this very important point to Ralph, which is the reason she did all these portraits of her family but didn't put any faces in them is that in the pictures that she was modeling off of, she could never get the smiles or the faces the way she wanted them in real life. But she could probably do that as a painting, but didn't want to. And I'm like, that's pretty deep,
Yeah, I mean, there's certain parts of this that you're like, yeah, Ralph, the White Knight has turned up again, and that's when they find out that he's divorced.
Mm-hmm.
He moved there to a fresh start,
Right.
and it's like you're like, oh, come on, darling, just go with the White Knight, just go with him, just leave Gene. No, he's not even going to know you're away until we kind of get fit. Do you know what I mean? Just go with the nice guy, go with him. But no, absolutely, I like that art scene, and obviously he's on duty, I may add, but
Yep.
he's blaming the champagne
Oh yeah,
for
he's
his
he's
working
enjoying it because
carry.
he
Yes,
thinks
yes.
it's gonna be an easy night. But even as he's talking to Helen, he's like, "Hey, where's your husband? Is he around?" And Helen's like, "No, he didn't. He didn't want to come. He didn't want to come up here." And Ralph kind of thinks that's not good though, and she's like, "It's fine." He's like, "Is it though?" And then all of a sudden he gets kind of saved by the squawk on his radio. He's like, "You know what? I gotta attend this, but in the future, you don't have to call me Officer Stansell anymore. You can call me Ralph." Uh, and yeah, so he like kind of heads away. Um, there is some more stuff. Like we get reminded that the whole marriage was a necessity, you might say, when she got pregnant, and so we get that trotted over again, and it really kind of hits home that you feel, yeah, this it was an inconvenient marriage, so to
Yeah.
speak.
What they call a shotgun marriage over in
Yeah,
America,
something of
something.
that nature.
Yeah, that kind of thing. So I just knocked my power cable out my laptop. Sorry.
Oh, no worries.
No, but no, no,
So
it's fine. The point is the fact that yeah, absolutely. And you look at it, and you go, Ralph's back again. Yes, we like Ralph because we've already had too much of Gene, even though he's been
yep.
written quite well from the start. He's been written very well. In fact, everybody's been written very well in my IMO. And yeah, yes, the White Knight's back. Like, go with him. Just leave Gene and go with him.
And he's
That,
a
we like that.
genuine white knight too. Like he's not
Yeah,
simping. He's
aye.
not trying to
Yeah,
enable bad
yeah,
habits or anything.
yeah.
He's
He's not a bad guy. He's just generally like, I want to look after you. I want you're not getting looked at. You can tell by reading that. You could feel that what the writer was trying to say is he's going, look, I know you're not getting treated right.
yeah.
I'll look after you, even if it's no like an intimate relationship or anything like that. I will look after you, and I'll make sure that you're going to be safe. And that's, let's be honest, that's what everybody wants, especially when we get to our later years in life.
Yeah, you
I
just want a little bit of that comfort and humanity if you're not finding it, where you're
totally.
supposed to get it. Now, what's really great here is we get a nice little homage to the earlier part of this story because now Gene is all alone. He's watching the game, but he's got a 12 gauge shotgun by his chair, and he's hearing those two same voices coming this time from the backyard. and
Mhm.
and they manage to open the rear door again, and Gene just checks the chamber of his gun and waits. And then we immediately cut back to the gallery, where the gallery is empty. It's post the show. Helen and Edna are celebrating a successful night because Edna was super thrilled, and she has given Helen a big old wad of cash, around 10 grand, for selling a couple of her pieces of art, which is pretty fantastic. So, like, this is something that Helen wasn't expecting. She always had this doubt that she wasn't good, even though she's getting compliments from Edna. Now she has a bit more, affirmation on her skills. She has this example under her belt saying, you know what, if people bought those paintings, they might buy others. I could make some extra cash on this, and if one night I earned 10 grand, even if I got half of that the next night or double that another night, that's not a bad living for a woman, in her 60s. And so Helen is all, she's a little happy, and she's kind of like jazzed, but then as soon as she gets back into her car, she's like, okay, trying to calm down, get alone, get stoic. And as she's driving back, she's rehearsing to herself, well, I don't know, officers. No, I was out at an event. Oh dear, that's just awful. Yes, that's him, all right. That's Gene. Just going through all the situations of, identifying the body, confirming her alibi, all that type of stuff. But when she when she arrives home, there's no police. Everything seems kind of normal, and she goes through the living room, and as she approaches the kitchen, she sees a bloody arm on the floor, and she calls out to Gene, and Gene's just kind of enters into from the kitchen from the other side, and he's covered in blood, and he's holding his shotgun, and Gene's just like, yeah, those idiots came back, and the first one didn't know what hit him, and he's dead, and that's Rodney. And then Benji is sitting on a chair. He's got shot in the leg, and he's been taped to the chair, and now Gene is like finishing off the taping with an extra roll of duct tape from the kitchen cabinet or a kitchen cupboard. And it was funny here is that Gene basically says to Helen, it's like, you recognize him, right? Our old friends back for more. And Helen thinks that Gene knows what's going on. She kind of plays it coy. And then Gene kind of reaffirms, like, yeah, these are the two that tried to rob us the other week. I don't know who they are, and they haven't said anything other than they came back for more. And Helen uses a very interesting argument, saying, like, well, you know, we shouldn't do anything more. We should let him go so that he, you know, won't ever come back again, and he's learned his lesson. And Gene's like, oh, I don't know. I mean, I kind of really, because he's like, I kind of want to. This is the guy that broke your nose. Like Gene actually is showing a little bit of emotion, saying, like, I want him to suffer because he hurt you. Like,
he's starting up being a husband, isn't he? He's starting to be what we expected to happen in the first act, you know, that kind of thing. We expect him to do that then.
Yeah.
I love the comedy style in the next bit, though, in terms of what you're just going to go through.
Oh, yeah. I mean, well, Gene gets this monologue that's basically says, like, you know, you see, my wife is more big-hearted than me, and she's willing to look past certain things and, forget. But he's like, when someone breaks into my home, when he holds a gun up to, and then he chokes up a bit, and he's like, to my wife's head, well, that's not something I can easily forgive. And I'll certainly never forget it. And you look at this point, you're like, wow, that's a type of Gene you kind of wish was like at the forefront all the time.
Yes.
And it made me scratch my head. It's thinking, well, has Gene ever been like this before? Or if he was the reason he changed because he became a father and a husband?
That's what I took from it.
Yeah.
I took from it.
And so I thought that was kind of interesting here because it actually gives Gene more depth. He's not just a simple narcissist. He's a narcissist, but it's all kind of a shield because he doesn't want to be vulnerable. And we don't know why he doesn't want to be vulnerable. Maybe it has something to do with the fact that he wasn't able to continue combat as a Marine in Vietnam. Maybe it's something else. It's left to our speculation and imagination. But when he's ready to basically blow this guy's face off, Helen has to come in there. Helen has to come in there and basically say, you don't have to go any further than that. Let's just let him go. And then Helen makes eye contact with Benji and says, you're not going to say anything, are you? And Benji's just shaking his head like, I am not doing anything. He's got tears going down his eyes. He is messing his pants of sorts. And Helen's like, okay. And she kind of she grabs a knife, a big old kitchen knife, and just cuts him loose. And Benji kind of just takes off like a bat out of hell. And
one leg.
Limping on a leg, on a shot leg. And then she looks over at Rodney's dead body on the floor, and she's like trying not to cry because she's the reason this young man is dead. Her plan has backfired quite literally, and we're left to figure out what's going to happen for that part. But there's another beat we can do because we haven't gotten to spoilers yet, guys. I mean, there's a lot happening, a lot of escalation going on. But the next part here is that Dwayne's on the phone with Minnie, and he's basically saying, "Okay, honey, I know you hate me, and I know I'm not allowed to see my kid, but whatever it is, you got to get out of town, and I'm gonna figure out something. I don't know how I'm gonna do it, but something is doing it. There's a version of me, Minnie, when I think about myself that you're like that's good. That I want to make all the right choices, but I keep on screwing up, and I don't know how to not screw up. But just know that I want to do whatever I can to help you." And then this is the funny clincher. He's like, "But you wouldn't happen to have any money of yours that I could borrow?" And it's like, and of course it's like, she's just like, lashing out of him, calling him all the names you can think of for someone who has this speech about trying to be better and then says, "Can I borrow some money?"
Yes. Yes.
And this is all as this all happens. Dwayne hears someone trying to get into his place, his apartment. Now, fortunately, Minnie has kind of hung up the phone, so he's kind of hiding under the bed for now. And it's Lawrence. He's broken in. And he's searching around for Dwayne, and he's going through the kitchen. He's going through the living room. He's about to enter the bedroom, and then there's a knock on his door, a frantic knock, and it's Benji on the other side. And he's screaming like, "Come on, man, open up! I know your car. I know you're here. Your car's parked, 2 blocks away, which is weird. Why would you do that?" And Lawrence decides to answer the door and just to the head to Benji, just right then and there.
Unalive them then. I read it and I went, no, that doesn't really need to be in there, but I get the point. It could have been said as a different. Somebody could have said off screen, that could have happened off screen. But like Lawrence is just your stereotypical idiotic henchman, isn't he? Really, let's be honest.
Yep, just taken out of what he needs, and he drags Benji's body, into the bathroom, and then cleans himself up. And then he goes into the bedroom and is about to leave, but then decides to look under the bed where Dwayne should be hiding, but he's not there. And then he notices a slight breeze through the curtains, separates the curtains, and we get that classic shot of, okay, we're out on the street, and there's Dwayne, running, huffing and puffing towards his car, hops in, gets in the car, drives off, ends up pulling up to his parents' place, banging on the door, "Mom, I need help. Mom, I need help." And he basically confesses, he's like, I need to get money. I need to get $8,000. Gene is like, of course, you loser.
I know we're not going to get into spoilers, right? But I liked this part with the three of them together. I liked how it was written and the narrative on it, and I liked how Gene, all through it's like, basically, I hate my son. I don't have a son. Blah blah blah, usual nonsense, right? But came downstairs. How much do you owe? Like instantly, like, how much do you owe?
Yep.
$8,000. All right, okay.
And then Helen's basically, well, there's $10,000 here. Gene's like, well, where'd you get that? She's like, I sold some of my paintings. He's like, well, good work. And then this is where we cut off, because Gene's words are, okay, we're gonna get going to pay off this guy. And that's where we're gonna cut off the spoilers here, because this last act, the climactic act, also, like, the pacing was much better for, like, the whole rear half of the script. The pacing is far better because things are starting to really kind of pick up well. What we see afterwards, I strongly recommend going to read it. Everyone out there listening, I think it'll give you a smile on your face. So, before we get to the final vote, there, Gums, do you have any final thoughts you quickly want to add before we make a decision?
Yes, it wouldn't be my first type of script I would pick it personally. If I was given a choice, I would never have picked this out in a list of scripts.
Right.
We get, I thoroughly enjoyed it. And you're absolutely right. The final act, if you go to patreon.com/scriptdoctor, sign up, you'll be able to read it yourself, and actually you'll enjoy it as much as we did. Well, I did, sorry, I can't speak for you.
Well, I mean, you can also vote on the script, because that's the real important part. Now, the other part, too, is, like, if you're not a Patreon, you're still interested, fan of the channel, what have you, just reach out to me. I'll be happy to get it in your hands. You can Google it to find. But, yeah, if you want to support the show by joining Patreon, I mean, that's an easy way to reach out to me, get those scripts also, and also participate in voting if you'd greenlight or give this one a pass. So, Richard, you like the script? Let's make it official. Greenlight or pass?
Greenlight. All
right. I'm in the same boats too. I liked it as well. I thought the logline was intriguing, and I was quite impressed. I thought Justin Varava did a great job with this. Number one, formatting was, like, all the technical stuff of the basics. Like the formatting, spelling, and grammar is all, like, bang on. Character voices were really distinct. I mean, I loved reading Gene and hating him. I absolutely loved Helen. I wish she were my mom. Like, she's just so sweet and endearing. I thought Dwayne and his friends were appropriately moronic for for the type of tone of this story and the desperation coming in there. And yeah, I give this a green light as well. Now, quickly checking in with our Patreons here. And we are in agreement. 100% of the vote also enjoyed the script, said to greenlight. Yeah. So you guys can participate as well. Like maybe if you enjoyed our commentary, or if you read the script and you disagree with us, please leave a comment, let me know, because we like getting that variety of opinions in a show like this, because that really helps us discern, the merits of that script. Maybe there's something we didn't catch that you guys did, or maybe there's something we caught that you didn't, and it kind of opens up that discussion. That's one of the big purposes of this show. So I'm really hoping that that Justin here manages to get this script some more traction, because this is a movie I would really like to see. It's got that quirkiness to it, but it's also something of its own, and it can be done for a low budget. And yeah, I think.
2 points to make at the end when you're finished, my friend.
Absolutely, yeah.
First thing, Michelle Ferry, you need to speak to the doctor. He'll sort you out in terms of finding out what happened at the end of the script. And second point is, I thoroughly enjoyed it. It would not be something I'd normally do. It's not something I would normally read. It's not something I'd normally enjoy, but I can tell you right now, I would go and watch it. And like you say, low budget, no massive money. Do you know what I mean? Maybe one older style actor, maybe like a John Goodman, something like that, for like.
Sure, yeah, for Gene or something, like yeah.
Gene,
or like, Ralph, he'd be a great Ralph too, knowing how to be. He knows how to be a sweet guy, yeah.
But the point is just the fact that absolutely, I enjoy it. I like the fact that Patreons enjoyed it as well. It's good. It's good. There you go, Michelle. You're very welcome, pal.
That's great. Well, Gums, man, I want to thank you so much for joining me this 4th of July holiday weekend. We got to read a great story. I was happy to have this one. This was good because it's not your typical traditional genre story. It's a nice, sweet drama with a little bit of comedy, very endearing characters. I hope there's a future for that. But I want to thank you again for joining me this weekend. I want to thank everyone out there for listening live or listening on the replay. It's always appreciated. If you want to get more fun, insights into what scripts we'll be reviewing on the show, you can join the Patreon. In addition to that, I also throw up a bonus episode when I do have the schedule to get them recorded and put out there. Plus, I also, when I have the time, and I'm trying to get better at this, throw in some tons of quick tips, writing tips, various screenplay reviews, various pilot or movie reviews that I'm able to kind of work in there. And you guys also have access to me, so you can private chat me on that as well. I give all of those patrons priority on the messages, but I like to make myself as accessible as I possibly can to help all you guys out there. If you're interested in screenwriting, interested in movies, or just have some general questions as to why this movie you like or why this movie you hate, maybe I can help you figure that out. With that being said, have a wonderful rest of the weekend, everybody, and never forget, when it comes to great story, it all starts with the script.